We've all found ourselves in a parking lot close to the water, and we look out the window and we see birds everywhere. But not just any kind of bird, your worst nightmare. Seagulls. They're on top of the buildings, they're on cars, they're in the parking lot, and they're pooping on everything. And you're sitting in your car and you're thinking to yourself, how am I going to get out of here and into there without being pooped on? And as you walk out of the car, it seems like they purposely try to dive bomb you. They swing down and people are like this. A lot of time I think, why is somebody purposely trying to dive bomb and crap on me? And it hurts the most when it's somebody that's close to you, maybe a brother or sister in Christ. And maybe they come to you and apologize, and you extend forgiveness, and they dive back in a little bit later and they poop on you again and they ask for forgiveness again, and you're like, how much longer am I supposed to do this? Or maybe they never even asked for forgiveness, and then you're harboring under all this bitterness and anger, and dissension is forming in your heart, and it's owning you, and you're being tortured by it. We all experience this. Jesus knew we would struggle with something like this. Forgiveness is a hard thing. It really is. And so he gives us a parable. He takes a story and he casts it alongside truth and the unforgiving servant to illustrate how we are to handle forgiveness. We're going to dissect that in our group today, and it's really going to examine like where we're at, because this is something we all really struggle with. But in this parable, you have Peter. He's asking Jesus, how many times are we supposed to forgive somebody? He says 7 times. And he's trying to be an overachiever because he knows in the old law it's 3 times that they're supposed to forgive somebody that sinned against them or has wronged them, and then they wipe their hands of it and they walk away. So Peter says 7 times. And Jesus responds with something that's something that we wouldn't expect. He says, I do not say to you up to 7 times, but up to 70 times 7. That's 490 times. How can somebody sin against you 490 times? Like, you would lose count, really. So what he's really illustrating is that you always forgive. Like, not just 7 times, Peter, but always. And then he gives this story to illustrate that. And remember, our theme verse is, anyone with ears to hear should listen and understand. We're here to dissect these parables and see how they apply to our lives. They're just as applicable today as they were then. Just like I used that seagull story to cast it alongside this. But in this parable, you have a master, and he has all these servants that owe him this money, and you have this, and he's going to collect the debt from them. They owe him all of this. You're going to pay it or else. And this one servant comes up that owes a debt it's so big, it's just impossible for him to pay. And in the parable, really, it equates to, he would have to work, some scholars say, 250 years in order to pay this debt off, up to maybe $1 billion, as the NLT says. It's a debt that couldn't be paid. So he's at the mercy of his master. Hey, I can't pay this debt. It's impossible for me to pay this debt. Please have mercy on me. Like, please. And the master does. He has compassion on him. And he extends forgiveness to him and forgives all of the debt. And lets him walk clean. Who is the master? The master is God. Who's the servant? We're the servant. We're the ones that have been forgiven a debt. Our sin debt. The problem with all of it, the first problem, before we can get to the good news, is dealing with our sin. How did he deal with the sin? He sent Jesus to die on the cross. He took all of our sin in some mysterious way upon the cross, and took all of God's wrath upon himself. He paid the debt so we can be made right with God and have a relationship with him and spend eternity with him. Have you accepted? Have you allowed him to take that forgiveness? How have you handled that forgiveness? If you've handled it, then how are you extending that out to others? Because the servant in the story does something crazy. He then takes the forgiveness, and then he turns around and goes to a fellow servant that owes him just a little bit of money. We're talking like lunch money, maybe $10 or something like that. And strangles him and says, pay me my money now, or I will throw you in jail until you can pay me back. And the servant says, hey, man, I don't have the money to give you. I don't have it. Like, give me some time to pay it back. And the servant says, no, I'm going to throw you in jail until you can pay it back. Well, the master gets angry about this and finds out all that had happened because he extended forgiveness to his servant when now he's finding his other servants not extending it to the other servants. He gets angry and he throws him in jail. In this parable, it's really going to examine where your heart's at, because we all struggle with this. Forgiveness is a hard one. We have a term where we say, let's get real, right? Let's get real with the questions. Well, that's what I want you to do. I want you to get real in your groups. I want you to be honest with your leader. If you haven't received that vertical forgiveness from God, like the forgiveness that he's extending to you, be honest about that. If you're not extending that, if you have received it, you're not extending it out to others, why? What's going on? Talk about it in your groups, and I cannot wait to hear how it goes.